They say the dead don't come back. That grief is the price we pay for love. But what happens when the person you've mourned for 5 years suddenly appears at your daughter's school, very much alive? This is the story of Olivia and Emma Mitchell, and the day a ghost from their past walked back into their lives. May 15th started like any other spring day at Meadowbrook Elementary School. The sky was clear, temperatures perfect for the annual field day activities. 8-year-old Emma Mitchell had been looking forward to this day for weeks. Emma was a quiet child with her mother's gentle smile and her father's thoughtful eyes. At least that's what everyone told her. She didn't remember much about her father. Michael Mitchell had died in a car accident when she was just 3 years old. The few memories she did have were precious treasures she guarded carefully in her heart. As Emma stood in the lunch line, balancing her tray of chicken nuggets and apple slices, something caught her attention across the playground. A man was standing by the fence, waving to a girl in another class. There was something about him, something familiar in the way he stood, the way he laughed. Emma squinted against the sun. The man had the same sandy brown hair as the father in her photos, the same height and build. And when he smiled at the girl, Sophie, a new student who'd transferred in a few months ago, Emma saw something that made her stomach drop. A small scar above his right eyebrow, just like in the photo on her nightstand. Mrs. Peterson, Emma's teacher, rushed over. "Emma, are you okay?" But Emma couldn't speak. Her eyes were fixed on the man who now looked in her direction, their gazes meeting for just a moment. Recognition flashed across his face before he quickly turned away, taking Sophie's hand and hurrying toward the parking lot. "Emma?" Mrs. Peterson touched her shoulder. "You're pale as a ghost. Do you feel sick?" Emma nodded silently. She did feel sick, because the man she just saw, the man with Sophie, looked exactly like her dead father. Emma barely touched her dinner that night. Olivia had grown accustomed to reading her daughter's moods. As a single mother for the past 5 years, they'd developed the kind of close relationship that comes from facing grief together. At 35, Olivia worked as an administrator at Emma's school district office, a job that allowed her to be present for her daughter while maintaining the modest lifestyle they'd grown accustomed to since Michael's death. Their home in the suburbs of Cleveland was comfortable, if not luxurious. Photos of Michael still adorned the walls and shelves. Olivia believed in keeping his memory alive for Emma. "Are you sure you're okay, sweetie?" Olivia asked as she cleared their plates that evening. "You've been quiet since you got home." Emma pushed her peas around her plate, eyes downcast. Then, without warning, the words tumbled out. "I saw Daddy today." Olivia froze, her heart skipping a beat. This wasn't entirely unexpected. Emma occasionally claimed to see her father in dreams, or feel his presence on important days. The child psychologist had assured Olivia this was normal, part of how young children processed grief. "Oh? Was it a nice thought about him?" Olivia asked gently, resuming her task. Emma shook her head firmly. "No, Mom. I saw Daddy, real Daddy, at school today. He was picking up the new girl, Sophie." The glass Olivia was rinsing slipped from her fingers, clattering in the sink. She turned to face her daughter, searching for the right words. "Honey, I know sometimes it feels like Daddy is still with us, and in many ways he is, but you know that Daddy died when you were little." Emma's face flushed with frustration. "It was him, Mom. He had the scar right here." She pointed above her own eyebrow. "And he laughed just like in the videos. He saw me too. He looked scared." Olivia sat down beside her daughter, taking her small hands. "Emma, sweetheart, I miss Daddy too, so much. But sometimes when we miss people, our minds can play tricks on us. We see what we want to see." "You don't believe me," Emma whispered, tears filling her eyes. That night, Olivia helped Emma get ready for bed as usual. The bedtime routine was sacred: bath, pajamas, story time, and what they called daddy talks, moments when Emma could ask questions about her father, and Olivia would share memories. But tonight, Emma was unusually quiet, as Olivia tucked her in beside the stuffed bear Michael had given her, and under the quilt Michael's mother had made. "Would you like to look at the album?" Olivia offered, reaching for the photo book they often reviewed during daddy talks. Emma shook her head. "I know what he looks like, Mom. I saw him today." After Emma fell asleep, Olivia sat in the living room, a glass of wine untouched beside her. Emma's words had disturbed her more than she let on. It wasn't the first time Emma had imagined seeing her father, but something about her certainty, the specific detail about the scar, a small mark from a childhood accident that wasn't visible in most family photos, gnawed at her. Olivia opened the family photo album, turning to their wedding pictures. Michael's face smiled back at her, handsome, kind, with crinkles around his eyes when he laughed. 5 years had passed since the accident that took him from them. 5 years of rebuilding a life from the shattered pieces he left behind. The official report had been straightforward. Michael's car had gone off a bridge during a heavy rainstorm. The vehicle was recovered, but his body had been swept downriver. After weeks of searching, authorities had declared him deceased. The closed casket funeral had been attended by hundreds. Michael had been well liked in their community, his work as a financial consultant bringing him into contact with many local businesses. Olivia traced his face in the photo. "What did she see today, Michael?" she whispered to the empty room. The following morning, Emma was adamant about returning to school despite still seeming unsettled. "Sophie's dad might come again," she explained, when Olivia suggested she stay home if still feeling unwell. During her lunch break, Olivia found herself pulling out the accordion folder where she kept important documents. Inside was Michael's death certificate, the police report, newspaper clippings about the accident, and sympathy cards. She'd kept everything, partly as proof for insurance and legal matters, partly because organizing these papers had given her something to focus on during those first terrible weeks. The death certificate stated clearly, Michael James Mitchell, deceased April 10th, 5 years ago. That evening when Emma came home from school, her disappointment was palpable. "He wasn't there today," she said, dropping her backpack by the door. "I looked everywhere." "Emma," Olivia began cautiously, "I want to show you something." She led her daughter to the dining table, where she'd laid out the death certificate and newspaper clippings. "This is why I know Daddy can't be at your school," she explained gently. "These are official papers that show Daddy died in the accident. Remember how we talked about this?" Emma studied the papers with a serious expression that seemed too mature for her 8 years. Then she looked up at her mother with those eyes, Michael's eyes. "Papers can be wrong, Mom." That night, after Emma went to bed, Olivia found a drawing on her daughter's desk. It showed a man and a girl standing by a car. The man was labeled Sophie's dad and had been drawn with remarkable detail for a child's artwork, right down to a small mark above his right eyebrow. By the third day, Olivia couldn't ignore the nagging feeling that something wasn't right. Emma's insistence, the specific details, the drawing, it was all so unusual for her typically pragmatic daughter. During her lunch break, Olivia called her friend Diane, who worked in the front office at Emma's school. "Hey Di, strange question. There's a new student named Sophie who started recently. Do you know anything about her family?" "Sophie Harrison," Diane confirmed. "Transferred in about 2 months ago. Sweet kid, quiet. Why do you ask?" "Just curious." "Emma mentioned her," Olivia said, trying to sound casual. "Does she have siblings at the school?" "No, just her. Lives with her dad. Mom passed away, I believe. Cancer, from what I heard. They moved here from Michigan to be closer to Sophie's grandmother." Olivia's heart rate quickened. "What's her dad like?" "Richard? Seems nice enough. Started volunteering for the reading program on Thursdays. The kids love him. Actually, he reminds me a bit of..." Diane paused. "Oh, I shouldn't say that." "Say what?" Olivia pressed. "It's just, the first time I met him, I thought he looked a bit like Michael. Similar build, coloring. I almost mentioned it but caught myself. Last thing you need is some thoughtless comparison to dredge up painful memories." Olivia gripped the phone tighter. "Do you have a photo? On the school system, maybe? We have his driver's license scan for the background check. But Liv, what's this about? Can you pull it up? Please, Di. It's important." "Okay, I'm looking at it now. Richard Harrison, 38. Brown hair, hazel eyes. Honestly, in this photo, the resemblance isn't that strong. Just a general type similarity." Olivia exhaled slowly. Of course. It was just a coincidence that had triggered Emma's imagination. "Thanks, Di. Sorry for the strange request." "No problem. Oh, he's actually here today. Came in for the volunteer orientation meeting. Want me to introduce you? Might put the whole resemblance thing to rest." Olivia froze. "He's there now?" "In the library with the other new volunteers. Meeting ends in about 15 minutes. I'll be right there." Olivia drove to Emma's school in a daze, telling herself this was just to put her daughter's confusion to rest. She could take a quick look at this Richard Harrison, reassure herself it was merely a passing resemblance, and then gently help Emma understand. She parked her car and hurried toward the main entrance, her heels clicking against the pavement. As she approached the front doors, they swung open, and a group of adults emerged from the building. The volunteer orientation meeting must have ended. Olivia slowed her pace, scanning the group. A tall woman with gray hair, a young man in a university sweatshirt, an elderly gentleman, a middle-aged woman with a bright scarf, and then a man stepped out last, checking his watch. Sandy brown hair, athletic build, casually dressed in jeans and a blue button-down shirt. He had his back to her as he waved goodbye to someone inside. When he turned, Olivia's world stopped spinning. Despite the neatly trimmed beard he now wore, despite the 5 years that had passed, she would know that profile anywhere. The straight nose, The defined jawline, the way he stood with weight shifted slightly to one side. As if sensing her presence, he looked up. Their eyes met across the courtyard. For one eternal second they stared at each other, recognition, shock, and something like fear flashing across his face. Then Richard Harrison, the man with her husband's eyes, turned and walked quickly toward the parking lot. Olivia couldn't move, couldn't breathe. The world narrowed to a single impossible thought. Michael was alive. To understand the magnitude of what Olivia experienced in that school courtyard, we need to step back and look at the life she and Emma had built around Michael's memory. The Mitchells had been the quintessential young family. Michael and Olivia met during their senior year of college, she studying education, he pursuing finance. Their friends described them as perfectly matched, both kind, somewhat reserved, with the same subtle sense of humor. You could tell they were meant for each other, recalled Sarah Jenkins, Olivia's best friend since college. They had this way of communicating without words. Michael would look across a crowded room at Olivia, and she'd just nod like he'd asked a question out loud. They married 2 years after graduation. Emma arrived 3 years later. Their modest home in a good school district had been carefully chosen with future siblings for Emma in mind. Home videos from that time show a doting father, Michael reading to infant Emma, Michael teaching toddler Emma to walk, his hands hovering protectively as she took wobbling steps. Michael asleep on the couch with Emma napping on his chest, one of his hands cupped gently around her tiny body. He adored that little girl. She was his world. That's why none of this makes any sense. The day everything changed, April 10th, 5 years ago, had been ordinary until it wasn't. Michael called Olivia on his way home from work. "It's pouring. I might be late," he said. "Don't hold dinner." Those were the last words she heard from him. When he hadn't arrived by 8 p.m., Olivia started calling his cell phone. No answer. By 9 p.m., she was calling hospitals. By 10 p.m., she'd reported him missing to the police. At 11:42 p.m., officers arrived at her door. "There's been an accident," they told her. "A car matching your husband's vehicle description went off Lakeside Bridge. Due to the storm conditions and strong currents, rescue operations are limited, but will resume at daybreak." 3 days of searching followed. Michael's car was recovered half a mile downstream. His wallet and phone were inside, but Michael wasn't. The subsequent weeks became a blur of police interviews, search updates, and finally, as hope faded, funeral preparations. Although no body was recovered, after extensive searching, authorities issued a death certificate. The theory was that Michael had been swept downstream into Lake Erie, where recovery would be nearly impossible. The community rallied around Olivia and Emma. Meals appeared on their doorstep. Friends took turns staying with them. Michael's parents, devastated by the loss of their only child, channeled their grief into supporting their daughter-in-law and granddaughter. Emma, not quite 4 years old, didn't fully comprehend what had happened. "Where, Daddy?" she would ask each morning for weeks. Olivia consulted child psychologists about the best way to explain death to a toddler. She created a memory box with Emma, filling it with photos and small mementos of Michael. They would visit his empty grave at Lakeview Cemetery, where Emma would leave drawings and talk to her father about her day. As the years passed, these rituals evolved, but remained central to their lives. The anniversary of Michael's death was marked with a special dinner where they shared memories. Emma's achievements were celebrated with acknowledgments of how proud her father would be. At bedtime, Emma often held the stuffed bear her father had given her, while Olivia recounted stories about him. "I was determined that Emma would know who her father was," Olivia explained, "that even though he was gone, his love for her would remain a presence in her life." Olivia's own grief journey was less visible, but no less profound. She attended support groups for young widows, saw a therapist, and slowly, painfully, rebuilt a life without the partner she'd expected to grow old with. Dating again had been a monumental step. Her first date, 3 years after Michael's death, ended with her crying in her car outside the restaurant. The second wasn't much better. By the 5th date, with different men over the course of months, she'd managed to get through an entire evening without comparing each man to Michael. But no relationship progressed beyond a few casual dates. Olivia wore her wedding ring on a chain around her neck, rather than on her finger, a step toward moving on that she couldn't quite complete. "It wasn't just about me," she admitted during our conversation. "I worried about how Emma would feel about another man in our lives, and honestly, no one measured up to what we had. I'd resigned myself to the possibility that Michael might have been my one great love." Michael's parents, Patricia and Robert Mitchell, remained deeply involved in Emma and Olivia's lives. Sunday dinners at their home were a weekly tradition. They never pressured Olivia to move on, seeming to find comfort in their shared dedication to preserving Michael's memory. "They were my rocks," Olivia said. They'd lost their son, yet somehow found the strength to help me raise Emma. They kept Michael alive for all of us. This was the backdrop against which Emma's shocking claim unfolded. A family defined by loss, held together by shared memories and carefully maintained rituals of remembrance. A mother and daughter who had painfully assembled a new normal from the pieces of their shattered expectations. And now, standing in that school courtyard, Olivia faced an impossible reality. The foundation of their rebuilt lives, Michael's death, might have been a lie. Olivia didn't remember driving home from the school. Her body operated on autopilot while her mind struggled to process what she'd seen. She called in sick to work, something she rarely did, and sat at her kitchen table, hands wrapped around a mug of tea gone cold. The man at Emma's school had looked like Michael, but after 5 years, couldn't her mind be playing tricks on her? Grief did strange things to perception. She'd once been convinced she saw Michael in a grocery store, only to realize it was a stranger when he turned around. But this felt different. The recognition in his eyes when he saw her, the way he'd hurried away, and there was Emma's insistence. Her daughter had recognized him first, had noticed details like the scar above his eyebrow that wasn't prominent in their photos. Diane arrived during her lunch break, concern written across her face. "You sounded so strange on the phone," she said, hugging Olivia. "What's going on?" Olivia led her friend to the living room, where she'd laid out family photos of Michael alongside Emma's drawing of Sophie's dad. "I need you to be brutally honest with me," Olivia said. "The man you know is Richard Harrison. Tell me truthfully how much he resembles Michael." Diane looked uncomfortable. "Liv, where is this coming from? Please, Di, this is important." Diane studied the photos, then sighed. "There's a resemblance, yes, enough that I noticed it the first time I met him. But Liv, lots of men have similar features. Brown hair, athletic build. It's not that unusual." "What about this?" Olivia pointed to a close-up photo where Michael's scar was visible. "Does Richard have a scar like this?" Diane peered at the photo. "I can't say I've noticed, but I haven't exactly been studying the man." Olivia pushed Emma's drawing forward. "Emma drew this. She included the scar." "Honey," Diane said gently, "I know this must be difficult. Emma's at an age where she's trying to process her loss. Maybe she's projecting." "She recognized him before I did," Olivia interrupted. "She saw him and immediately knew. How would she recognize a father she barely remembers unless it was actually him?" Diane took Olivia's hands. "What exactly are you suggesting? That Michael faked his death? Left you and Emma? The Michael you knew would never do that." "The Michael I thought I knew," Olivia whispered. After Diane left, Olivia did something she'd avoided for years. She went to the attic and found the banker's box containing all the paperwork related to Michael's death. The police reports, the insurance documents, the legal declarations. She spread them across the floor, reading each one carefully, looking for, what? A discrepancy? A clue she'd missed? The police report described witnesses who saw a car matching Michael's going off the bridge. The vehicle identification matched. His wallet and phone were recovered from the car. The driver's side door was open, suggesting he'd attempted to escape the sinking vehicle. The search had been thorough. Divers, helicopter sweeps, shore patrols. After 2 weeks, with no body recovered, the case was classified as a presumed drowning. The life insurance company had initially been reluctant to pay without a body, but eventually released the funds after the official death certificate was issued. Everything seemed in order, and yet, Emma arrived home from school, dropping her backpack by the door. She stopped when she saw the papers spread across the living room floor. "Did you believe me?" she asked quietly. "Did you see him too?" Olivia looked at her daughter, this perceptive child who noticed everything. "I saw someone who looked very much like the pictures of your dad," she said carefully. "I'm trying to understand who he might be." Emma sat cross-legged on the floor beside her mother. "It's Daddy," she said with the simple certainty of a child. "He just has a beard now, and he pretends he doesn't know us." That evening, Olivia called Patricia and Robert Mitchell. She couldn't bring herself to share her suspicions over the phone, instead inviting them for dinner the following night. "There's something important I need to discuss with you about Emma," she said, which wasn't entirely untrue. After putting Emma to bed, Olivia opened her laptop. Her fingers hovered over the keyboard before typing, "Richard Harrison, Cleveland." The search returned too many results to be useful. She refined it. Richard Harrison, Michigan. One promising link appeared. A business listing for Harrison Financial Advisors in Grand Rapids, established 4 years ago. The website was simple but professional. No photos of the owner, just a logo and service descriptions. A financial advisor, just like Michael had been. Olivia's hands shook as she found the business phone number and dialed it, not sure what she would say if someone answered. The call went to voicemail. "You've reached Harrison Financial Advisors. Our office is currently closed. Please leave a message or visit our website to schedule a consultation. The voice was deliberately professional, a bit deeper than she remembered, but the cadence, the way certain words were emphasized, it sent chills down her spine. She hung up without leaving a message. Next, she searched social media for Richard Harrison, Michigan. Most profiles were private, showing only profile pictures too small to examine closely. One showed a man with similar coloring to Michael, but the photo quality was too poor to be certain. She created a fake profile and sent friend requests to several Richard Harrisons, then closed her laptop, feeling both determined and slightly ashamed of her amateur detective work. Sleep was impossible. Olivia lay awake, her mind racing through possibilities. If the man at school was Michael, why had he faked his death? Why abandon them? Was he in some kind of trouble? Witness protection? Had their entire marriage been a lie? And what about Sophie? The girl appeared to be around Emma's age. Had he started a new family while still married to Olivia? Or was there an innocent explanation for all of this? The next morning, Olivia called Emma's school and arranged for her daughter to stay for after-school care, something she rarely did. Then she contacted the school's principal directly. "Angela, I need to ask you about your security protocols," she said, trying to keep her voice steady. "Do you have cameras in the parking lot or playground?" "We upgraded the system last year," Angela confirmed. "Is there a specific concern?" "There was an incident during field day, a stranger on school grounds who made Emma uncomfortable," Olivia said, the half-truth bitter on her tongue. "I'd like to view the footage if possible." As a district employee with proper clearance and a parent with a reasonable request, Olivia was granted access to the security footage. That afternoon, she sat in the school's security office with the technology coordinator, reviewing video from field day. "We're looking for around lunchtime," Olivia explained. "Playground area, and then possibly the parking lot." The footage was grainier than she'd hoped, but clear enough. Children streamed across the playground for lunch period. Emma appeared at the top of the screen, lunch tray in hand. Olivia's heart clenched at the sight of her daughter's familiar yellow sweater. "Can we see more of the fence area?" she asked, pointing to the edge of the frame. The coordinator adjusted the view. A moment later, a man appeared, standing by the fence. He waved, and a little girl, Sophie presumably, ran over to him. "Can you zoom in?" Olivia's voice shook slightly. The image enlarged, pixelating somewhat but still discernible. The man was turned partly away from the camera, his face not fully visible, but his posture, the set of his shoulders, even the way he gestured as he spoke to the child, it was all hauntingly familiar. Then, as if sensing he was being watched, the man looked up. The camera caught his profile, and Olivia had to stifle a gasp. Even with the beard, even with the pixelation, there was no mistaking that face. The footage showed Emma dropping her tray, the man noticing her, the moment of frozen recognition between them, then his hasty departure with Sophie. "Is that what you needed to see?" the coordinator asked. Olivia nodded numbly. "Yes, thank you." Patricia and Robert Mitchell arrived for dinner that evening, bringing Emma's favorite dessert and their usual warm affection. Emma greeted her grandparents enthusiastically, while Olivia moved through dinner preparations in a fog of distraction. Over pasta and salad, Emma chattered about school projects, while the adults maintained normal conversation. After dinner, Olivia sent Emma to take her bath, using their evening routine as an excuse for private time with her in-laws. When Emma was upstairs, Olivia poured 3 glasses of wine and took a deep breath. "There's something I need to discuss with you both, and it's going to sound impossible," she began. "It's about Michael." Patricia reached for her husband's hand. "What about him, dear?" "I believe," Olivia paused, the words catching in her throat. "I believe he may be alive." The statement hung in the air. Robert's face hardened while Patricia's hand flew to her mouth. "Olivia," Robert said firmly, "I know the anniversary just passed, and that's always difficult." "No," Olivia interrupted, something she rarely did with her gentle father-in-law. "This isn't grief talking. Emma saw him at her school 3 days ago. I saw him yesterday." She explained everything. Emma's initial sighting, the drawing, the school security footage, the Michigan business listing. "The man goes by Richard Harrison now. He has a daughter named Sophie, around Emma's age. He recently moved here from Michigan." Patricia was shaking her head slowly, tears forming. "This isn't possible. We buried our son." "We buried an empty casket," Olivia reminded her gently. "His body was never found." Robert's face had gone ashen. "Are you suggesting Michael deliberately abandoned his family, left his child, left us to grieve?" "No, not my son. I don't know what happened," Olivia admitted, "but I know what I saw, and tomorrow I intend to confront him." Thursday morning dawned clear and cool. Olivia had barely slept, her conversation with the Mitchells playing on repeat in her mind. They'd left troubled and unconvinced. Patricia in tears, and Robert angry at what he perceived as an attack on their son's character. "We understand you're still processing your grief," Robert had said at the door, his voice gentler than his words. "But please don't drag Michael's memory, or worse, Emma, into these delusions." Olivia had expected their disbelief. She would have reacted the same way a week ago if someone had suggested Michael was alive. But now, with what she'd seen, she knew she had to find the truth. For Emma, for herself, and yes, even for Michael's parents. According to Diane, Richard Harrison volunteered for the reading program on Thursday afternoons. Olivia requested another personal day, dressed carefully in a blue dress Michael had always liked, and drove to Emma's school. She parked across the street, positioning her car with a clear view of the main entrance. School wouldn't dismiss for several hours, but the volunteers typically arrived early for training and preparation. At 1:15 p.m., a dark blue sedan pulled into the visitor parking space. Olivia's breath caught as a man emerged from the car. Even from this distance, the resemblance was unmistakable. He wore khakis and a light gray sweater, an outfit so similar to what Michael used to wear that it felt deliberate, a taunt. He entered the building, and Olivia forced herself to wait. Confronting him inside the school would create a scene, potentially traumatizing students, including Emma. Better to approach him in the parking lot afterward. The next 2 hours were excruciating. Olivia alternated between rehearsing what she would say and fighting the urge to drive away, to preserve the certainty of her grief rather than face the possibility of betrayal. At 3:30 p.m., students began streaming out of the building. Olivia slouched lower in her seat, not wanting to be spotted by Emma or her friends. The volunteer program would end soon after dismissal. At 3:45 p.m., the man emerged from the side entrance, checking his watch, a gesture so familiar it made Olivia's chest ache. He walked briskly toward his car, keys in hand. Now or never. Olivia got out of her car and crossed the street. Her legs felt wooden, her heart hammering so loudly she was certain he would hear it. She approached as he was unlocking his car door. "Michael?" she called, her voice surprisingly steady. He froze, his back to her. For a moment he didn't move, didn't turn. Then slowly, he straightened and faced her. 5 years had changed him in subtle ways. The beard, a few strands of gray at his temples, lines around his eyes that hadn't been there before. But those eyes, those were the same eyes that had looked at her with love across the altar, the same eyes that had filled with tears when he first held Emma. "I think you have me confused with someone else," he said, his voice controlled. "My name is Richard." Olivia took a step closer. "No, your name is Michael James Mitchell. You're my husband and Emma's father." His expression remained neutral, but his eyes darted past her, scanning the nearly empty parking lot. "Look, I don't know who you think I am, but I need to go. My daughter will be waiting for me at her grandmother's." "Your daughter?" Olivia's voice cracked. "Which one? Sophie or Emma?" Color drained from his face. "Please, you don't understand." "Then help me understand," Olivia said, moving closer still. "Help me understand how my husband, the man I mourned for 5 years, is standing in front of me now, pretending to be someone else. Help me understand what to tell our daughter, who recognized you instantly despite barely remembering you." He glanced at his watch, another painfully familiar gesture. "I can't do this here. Not now. Then where? When? Another 5 years from now?" Anger seeped into Olivia's voice. "You owe me an explanation." His composure slipped. "Lower your voice, please." "Why should I? Are you afraid someone will hear? That your carefully constructed lie will fall apart?" She was trembling now, years of grief transforming into rage. "Tell me I'm wrong. Tell me you're not Michael." He looked at her directly for the first time. "Olivia?" Just her name in his voice was confirmation enough. Her knees weakened, and she grabbed the car for support. "Oh my God," she whispered. "It really is you." He glanced nervously toward the school. "We can't talk here. Not like this." "Then where?" she demanded. "Rockwell Park. Tonight at 8. I'll explain everything." He opened his car door. "Please, Olivia, come alone." Before she could respond, he was in his car, pulling away from the curb. Olivia stood rooted to the spot, watching the blue sedan disappear around the corner. She was still sitting in her parked car when the after-school program ended and Emma emerged with her friends. Olivia composed herself, forcing a smile as her daughter climbed into the car. "How was your day, sweetie?" she asked, her voice only slightly shaky. "Good. We made Mother's Day cards in art class." Emma studied her mother's face. "Your eyes are red. Were you crying?" "Just allergies," Olivia lied, hating herself for the deception. "How about pizza for dinner? We could order from Tony's." Emma's face lit up at her favorite treat, momentarily distracted from her mother's distress. During dinner, Olivia called her neighbor Lisa, arranging for Emma to have a movie night sleepover with Lisa's daughter Chloe. Are you okay? Lisa asked, picking up on something in Olivia's voice. You seem off. I'm fine. Just some personal business to take care of tonight. After dropping Emma at Lisa's house, Olivia drove to Rockwell Park, arriving 20 minutes early. The park was quiet on a weeknight, just a few joggers and dog walkers enjoying the spring evening. She sat on a bench overlooking the duck pond, the same bench where Michael had proposed to her 12 years earlier. If that was deliberate on his part, it was either incredibly thoughtful or unbearably cruel. At exactly 8 p.m., he approached from the walking trail. He'd changed into jeans and a dark sweater, the beard somehow more pronounced in the fading light. He sat beside her, maintaining careful distance between them. For a long moment, neither spoke. The unreality of the situation settled over Olivia, sitting beside her dead husband on the bench where their life together had officially begun. You haven't changed, he finally said, his voice soft. You look exactly the same. Olivia turned to him, anger flashing. Don't you dare act like this is some happy reunion. He nodded, eyes downcast. You're right. I'm sorry. Are you Michael? She demanded, needing to hear him admit it. He hesitated, then nodded. Yes. Say it. Say your name. He looked directly at her, shoulders sagging in defeat. My name is Michael James Mitchell. The confirmation, even though she'd already known, hit Olivia like a physical blow. She pressed her hands against her mouth, muffling a sob. Why? She whispered when she could speak again. Why would you do this to us? Michael, for it was truly him, looked out over the pond. It's complicated. I have all night, Olivia replied coldly. He took a deep breath. I was in trouble, Olivia. The kind of trouble I couldn't drag you and Emma into. What kind of trouble justifies abandoning your family? Making us believe you were dead? The kind that could have put you both in danger. He ran a hand over his face, another achingly familiar gesture. The kind that could have sent me to prison for a very long time. Olivia stared at him, disbelieving. You're talking in circles. What did you do? About 7 years ago, I got involved with some clients who wanted creative financial solutions. His voice was measured, rehearsed. It started small, just some aggressive tax avoidance strategies. Then it escalated to offshore accounts, shell companies, moving money around to hide it from the IRS. You were laundering money, Olivia translated flatly. He winced at the blunt assessment. I told myself it was just fancy accounting, that no one was getting hurt. The clients were happy, the commission was good, and we needed the money with Emma starting preschool and the mortgage. Don't you dare blame this on our financial needs, Olivia hissed. We were fine. We were always fine. You're right, he conceded. It wasn't about need. It was about greed and weakness and making bad choices. By the time I realized how deep I was in, it was too late. The FBI was investigating one of my biggest clients. It was only a matter of time before they got to me. So instead of facing consequences, you abandoned your family? Olivia's voice rose despite her effort to control it. You left me to raise our daughter alone while you started a new life? I thought I was protecting you both, he insisted. If I'd been arrested, we would have lost everything. My assets would have been frozen or seized, my reputation destroyed. Emma would have grown up visiting her father in prison. Instead, she grew up visiting an empty grave. Olivia shook with anger. Do you have any idea what we went through? The nightmares? The therapy? Emma crying for you night after night? Your parents nearly destroying themselves with grief? Michael's eyes filled with tears. I never wanted to hurt any of you. The plan was to disappear, establish myself somewhere new with a clean record, then find a way to bring you and Emma to me. But you didn't, Olivia said flatly. Instead, you built a whole new life, with a new daughter. He looked away. Sophie's mother, Cynthia, she didn't know about my past. We met in Michigan about a year after I left. She was a single mother with a 3-year-old daughter. When she got sick, I promised to take care of Sophie. So you became her father, Olivia said bitterly, while abandoning your own child. I never stopped thinking about Emma, about you. He pulled out his wallet and removed a worn photograph. Emma at 3, the last age he'd seen her. I've carried this every day. Olivia bit back a harsh laugh. How noble of you to carry a photo while we carried the reality of your absence. For several minutes, they sat in loaded silence. A million questions crowded Olivia's mind, alongside a confusing mixture of grief, rage, and a treacherous undercurrent of relief that Michael wasn't dead. Why did you come back to Cleveland? She finally asked. Of all the places you could have gone, why risk coming back here? Sophie's grandmother lives here. When Cynthia died last year, her mother was devastated. She wanted to be part of Sophie's life, and Sophie needed that connection. I never imagined we'd end up at Emma's school. He shook his head. The odds seemed impossible. Yet here we are, Olivia said quietly. So what happens now? Michael looked at her uncertainly. What do you want to happen? What I want? Olivia's laugh held no humor. I want the last 5 years back. I want to not have grieved for a man who was building a life without me. I want our daughter to not have grown up believing her father loved her so little that he couldn't even visit from heaven. I'm sorry, he whispered. I know that's not enough, but I am truly sorry. Olivia stood abruptly. You're right. It's not enough. Not even close. What are you going to do? Fear edged his voice. Olivia, if this comes out, if authorities find out I'm alive, I'll go to prison. Sophie will lose another parent. You should have thought of that before coming back to Cleveland. Olivia's voice was ice. Before volunteering at our daughter's school, for God's sake. Please. He stood too, maintaining distance between them. I know I have no right to ask anything of you, but I'm asking for time. Time to figure out how to make this right. Make this right? Olivia repeated incredulously. There is no making this right, Michael. You destroyed our family. You broke Emma's heart. You broke mine. I know, he acknowledged, his voice cracking. And I'll spend the rest of my life trying to atone for that, if you'll let me. But please, don't rush into anything. Think about what this will do to Emma if it's handled badly. At the mention of their daughter, Olivia's anger cooled slightly. Emma remained the innocent center of this catastrophe. Whatever happened next would affect her most of all. 1 week, she said finally. You have 1 week to come up with a plan for how you're going to explain to our daughter why her father pretended to be dead for 5 years. 1 week to decide how you're going to make this right with your parents, who have mourned you every single day. Relief washed over his face. Thank you. Don't thank me, Olivia warned. I'm not doing this for you. I'm doing it for Emma. And Michael, if you disappear again, if you try to run from this mess you've created, I will find you, and I will make sure you face every consequence you've been avoiding. She walked away without looking back, her legs surprisingly steady despite the earthquake that had just devastated her world for the second time. The week that followed was surreal. Olivia moved through her days in a fog, going through the motions at work, maintaining normalcy for Emma's sake. She told no one about her discovery. Not Diane, not Michael's parents, not even her therapist. The truth felt too explosive, too fragile to share until she understood what would happen next. Emma continued to mention Sophie's dad occasionally, clearly still processing her own confusing recognition. Olivia deflected these comments gently, promising herself that soon, very soon, her daughter would have answers. Michael texted once, "Can we meet again tomorrow night? Same place, same time." Olivia replied with a single word, "Yes." This time, she arrived exactly at 8 p.m. to find Michael already waiting on the bench. He looked as though he hadn't slept in days, dark circles under his eyes, his posture tense. "Thank you for coming," he said as she sat beside him. "You said you had a plan," Olivia replied, bypassing pleasantries. "I'm here to hear it." Michael nodded, taking a folded sheet of paper from his pocket. "I've thought about this constantly, about what's best for Emma, for Sophie, for everyone involved." He unfolded the paper, a typed list of points. "I want to come clean, Olivia. Not to the authorities, at least not yet, but to our families." Olivia's eyebrows rose in surprise. She'd expected him to suggest maintaining the charade, perhaps creating some elaborate explanation for his miraculous return from the dead. "I want to tell Emma the truth, in an age-appropriate way," he continued, "that I made a terrible mistake, that I've been living under a different name, and that I never stopped loving her. I want to tell my parents the same." "And Sophie?" Olivia asked. "What will you tell her?" Michael rubbed his face wearily. "That's more complicated. She's known me as her father since she was 3, the same age Emma was when I left. She's already lost her mother. I don't want to shatter her world by revealing I'm not who she thinks I am." "So you'll continue lying to her while telling our daughter the truth?" Olivia challenged. "How is that fair to either of them?" "I don't have perfect answers," Michael admitted. "Just the least harmful ones I can find." For the next hour, they discussed the logistics of Michael's plan. He would tell Emma first, with Olivia present, in a controlled environment with a child psychologist on standby, then his parents, though he feared his father might never forgive him. Sophie would be told a simplified version, that Michael had another family before her mother, and that he had to go by a different name for complicated grown-up reasons. After that, Michael said, his voice hesitant, "I want to make amends legally, turn myself in." Olivia stared at him. "You'd go to prison? What about Sophie?" "She would stay with her grandmother during any incarceration, and I've set aside funds for her future." He met Olivia's gaze directly. "I'm tired of running, Liv. Tired of living a lie. Seeing you and Emma again made me realize how much I've lost, how much damage I've done. I want to make it right, whatever the cost." The use of her old nickname, Liv, sent a pang through Olivia's chest. This man before her sounded more like the Michael she'd married than the coward who'd faked his death. "And us?" she asked quietly. What happens to us? Michael's expression softened. That's entirely up to you. I forfeited any right to expectations when I left. If you want a divorce, I'll sign the papers without contest. If you've met someone else, I haven't, Olivia interrupted, then immediately wondered why she'd felt the need to clarify. Whatever you decide, I want to be in Emma's life, if you'll allow it, not to replace what we had, but to be her father, in whatever capacity you deem appropriate. It was a carefully worded statement, respectful of the boundaries Olivia had every right to establish. Yet underneath, she sensed the desperate hope of a man who'd realized too late what he'd thrown away. I need time, she said finally. This isn't something I can decide tonight. Michael nodded. Of course. But there's one more thing. He hesitated. Emma recognized me at school. She might mention it to my parents on Sunday when you go for dinner. We should tell her something before then. Olivia knew he was right. Emma's perception was too acute, her curiosity too persistent to be satisfied with deflections much longer. Saturday, she decided. We'll tell her together on Saturday morning. My house, 10 a.m. I'll arrange for a child psychologist to be available afterward. Relief crossed Michael's face. Thank you. As they prepared to leave, an uncomfortable thought occurred to Olivia. Michael, does Sophie ever mention Emma? Do they interact at school? He shook his head. They're in different grades and classes. I don't think they know each other beyond perhaps seeing each other in the halls. Half-sisters passing each other without knowing, Olivia murmured, the reality of the situation hitting her anew. This is all so impossible. I know. Michael stood, maintaining the respectful distance he'd kept throughout their meetings. For what it's worth, Olivia, not a day went by that I didn't regret what I did to you and Emma. The life I built afterward was hollow at its core. Olivia didn't reply. Words of forgiveness wouldn't come, and words of accusation felt redundant. Instead, she simply nodded and walked away, carrying the weight of decisions that would reshape not just her life, but the lives of two children who deserved better than the complications adults had created for them. Saturday morning arrived with a gentle rain that matched Olivia's somber mood. She'd barely slept, rehearsing what they would tell Emma, anticipating questions she might ask, preparing for tears, or anger, or confusion, or all three. The child psychologist, Dr. Leah Winters, arrived first. Olivia had explained the situation in a confidential session earlier in the week, and Dr. Winters had helped craft an approach that would prioritize Emma's emotional well-being. Children are remarkably resilient, Dr. Winters reminded Olivia as they waited, but they need honesty, delivered with love and at a level they can process. Emma may surprise you with her capacity to understand complex situations. Michael arrived exactly at 10, looking as nervous as Olivia felt. He'd trimmed his beard and wore a blue button-down shirt that Emma might recognize from old photos. The effort to make himself familiar to his daughter touched Olivia, despite her lingering anger. Emma was in the backyard, playing with the neighbor's dog through the fence. Olivia called her inside, her heart racing. Emma, sweetheart, there's someone very important here to see you. Emma entered the living room, curious. Her eyes fell on Michael, and she froze, her small body tensing. Sophie's dad, she said, confusion evident in her voice as she looked to her mother for explanation. Michael knelt to her eye level, maintaining distance. Emma, he said, his voice thick with emotion. I'm not just Sophie's dad. I'm your dad too. Emma's eyes widened. She looked from Michael to Olivia and back again. But my dad died when I was little. No, sweetie, Olivia said gently, moving to Emma's side. That's what we thought, what I thought, but it turns out your dad has been living somewhere else, using a different name. You're really my dad? Emma's voice was small, uncertain. The one in all the pictures? Michael nodded, tears flowing freely now. Yes, Em, it's me. Emma took a tentative step forward, studying his face. You have the scar, right there. She pointed to his eyebrow. And your eyes are the same as in the pictures. Yes, Michael whispered. Why did you go away? Didn't you love us anymore? The question, so direct, so heartbreaking, hung in the air. Michael struggled visibly to find the right words. I made a terrible mistake, Emma. I did something wrong, something grown-ups shouldn't do, and I was scared of getting in trouble, so I ran away and pretended to be someone else. Like when I broke Mom's vase and blamed it on the cat, Emma asked, trying to make sense of adult failures through a child's framework. A ghost of a smile crossed Michael's face. A bit like that, but much, much worse. What I did hurt your mom very badly, and you too, and I'm more sorry than I can ever say. Olivia watched her daughter process this information, marveling at the complexity of emotions playing across her young face. Confusion, hurt, anger, but also curiosity, and perhaps a flicker of hope. Is Sophie my sister? Emma asked suddenly. Michael looked startled by the question. Well, yes, She's your half-sister. We don't share the same mom, but we have the same dad. Does she know about me? Not yet, Michael admitted. I need to tell her in a way that won't scare or confuse her, just like we're telling you now. Emma turned to Olivia. Are you mad at Dad? The directness of the question caught Olivia off guard. She considered deflecting, but decided on honesty. Yes, honey, I am. What your dad did hurt us very much, but I'm also glad that you get to know him now, if that's what you want. Emma nodded slowly, then turned back to Michael. Are you going to live with us now? No, sweetie, he said gently. I live with Sophie, but I'd like to spend time with you, get to know you again, if that's okay with your mom. Emma considered this, her brow furrowed in concentration. Then, without warning, she stepped forward and wrapped her arms around Michael's neck. I knew it was you, she whispered. Michael closed his eyes, carefully returning his daughter's embrace, his face a portrait of mingled joy and devastation at what he'd missed. Olivia turned away, giving them privacy while she composed herself. Dr. Winters caught her eye and nodded encouragingly. The hardest part was over, but the path forward remained uncertain and complex. The weeks that followed were a careful navigation through uncharted emotional territory. Telling Patricia and Robert Mitchell that their son was alive proved as difficult as anticipated. Robert initially refused to believe it, convinced that Olivia had fabricated the story due to prolonged grief. When Michael finally appeared before them, Patricia fainted, and Robert stood frozen in disbelief before erupting in anger, unlike anything Michael had ever witnessed from his normally reserved father. We buried you, Robert said, his voice breaking. We mourned you every day for 5 years. How could you do this to your mother? To your wife and child? The reunion was far from the joyful homecoming depicted in movies. It was raw, painful, filled with accusations and tears. Yet beneath the anger lay the undeniable relief that their son lived, that the aching void of his death had been a lie. For Emma, the adjustment came with surprising resilience. Dr. Winters noted that children often adapt more quickly than adults to changed circumstances, particularly when those changes fulfill deep wishes. Emma has fantasized about her father returning for most of her life, Dr. Winters explained to Olivia. While the circumstances are far from ideal, the reality of having her father back aligns with her deepest hope. The legal implications of Michael's return were complex and far-reaching. After consulting with attorneys, he made the decision to turn himself in to authorities, confessing to financial crimes and the fraud of faking his death. The district attorney, taking into account his voluntary surrender and the unusual circumstances, agreed to reduce charges. Michael received a sentence of 18 months in a minimum security facility, with eligibility for early release with good behavior. The judge, noting the impact on 2 children, allowed for regular family visitation rights. For Olivia, the most challenging aspect was defining her relationship with Michael going forward. They were legally still married. His death hadn't dissolved their union since he hadn't actually died. Yet the betrayal and 5 years of separate lives created a chasm that simple reconciliation couldn't bridge. I don't know what we are to each other anymore, she admitted during a private conversation with Michael before he began his sentence. I'm not your widow, but I don't feel like your wife either. We can be whatever you want us to be, Michael replied. Co-parents, friends, legally married but practically separated. I'll follow your lead, Liv. Olivia chose to table any definitive decision until after Michael completed his sentence. We both need time, she reasoned. Time to see who we are now and whether those people have any future together. Perhaps the most delicate aspect of their new reality was the relationship between Emma and Sophie. After careful preparation with child psychologists, the girls were introduced as half-sisters. Initial awkwardness gave way to cautious curiosity, then gradually to genuine connection. They share more than just Michael's DNA, Olivia observed to Patricia during a Sunday dinner. They have the same laugh, the same way of tilting their head when they're thinking. For Sophie, learning that Daddy had another name and another family was confusing, but the concrete reality of having a sister provided tangible compensation for abstract adult complications. The girls began regular supervised visits, building a tentative sibling relationship that existed separate from the complex adult dynamics surrounding them. 6 months after Emma's discovery on the playground, a new normal had begun to emerge from the chaos. Michael was serving his sentence, maintaining regular contact with both daughters through visits and phone calls. Sophie lived primarily with her grandmother, with Olivia providing support and occasional care to maintain stability for both girls. Patricia and Robert Mitchell had moved through their initial shock and anger to a wary reconciliation with their son, visiting him monthly while deepening their relationship with their newfound granddaughter, Sophie. Olivia had returned to therapy, processing the complicated grief of losing a husband not to death, but to deception, and the equally complex emotions of his return. She began dating cautiously, with Michael's full knowledge and encouragement, though each attempt highlighted how deeply the experience had affected her ability to trust. Emma thrived under the expanded family circle, proudly introducing Sophie as her sister at school, visiting her father with a resilience that amazed the adults around her. The child psychologist noted that Emma's unique experience had accelerated her emotional maturity, giving her insights into human complexity beyond her years. And in an unexpected development, Olivia and Sophie's grandmother, Janet, formed a supportive friendship based on their shared experience of loving the children caught in Michael's deception. "We're an unconventional family," Janet remarked during a joint birthday celebration for the girls, "but we're making it work for them." As we conclude this remarkable story, it's important to note that there are no fairy tale endings in situations of such complexity. Michael's actions caused profound harm that can never be fully undone. Trust, once shattered, cannot be perfectly restored. The legal and emotional consequences continue to ripple through all their lives. Yet within this messy, imperfect reality, moments of genuine healing have emerged. Two sisters found each other. Grandparents regained a son they thought lost forever. A mother found closure to grief that had defined her for years. And a father, despite his profound failings, received the opportunity to make amends to the family he abandoned. Emma, now 9, perhaps summarized it best in an essay she wrote for school, which her mother shared with us. "Family is complicated. Sometimes people leave, sometimes they come back, and sometimes they were never really gone. My dad did a bad thing when he went away, but I'm glad he came back. Now I have a sister, and extra grandparents, and more people who love me. My mom says forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting what happened, but choosing to make room for someone in your heart again, even when they hurt you. I'm still learning what that means, but I think we all are." This story raises profound questions about forgiveness, redemption, and the resilient bonds of family. I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. Would you have handled things differently if you were Olivia? Do you believe Michael deserves forgiveness? How would you explain such a complicated situation to a child? If you found this story moving, please consider sharing it with others. Your support helps us continue bringing these complex human narratives to light. And if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button and notification bell. We share new stories every day, exploring the unexpected twists and profound truths of human experience.